Today I wanted to talk about half-swording and its place in modern fencing. My short and concise version of how to use half-swording is to say that you do not intentionally decide to use it, rather you are forced to. What do I mean by this? Basically, whenever you decide to get into a situation where you can perform half-swording techniques, that is to say, very close, and you can grab like this and again hit the other person. At these distances, right up close here, there is pretty much always a better technique that is not a half-swording technique. And those techniques in Italian tradition are generally known as, well, Fiore's tradition are generally known as stretto, say constrained, I believe the translation is. These are usually techniques where you bind very close, both at our strongs, and then I let go with one hand from the sword and I do something to you or your sword, and then I have an opening to hit you or stab you. Now, why are these better than half-swording? Well, they are generally zero-sum, meaning that if I successfully pull them off, you can't do anything and I have won. Let's take a few examples. We come into a bind, we're very strong, and you, let's say, see my, what's this called, hilt. So you grab it and pull my sword to the side, and then you stab me. That's pretty clear cut. You win. Another example is we bind. I'm very strong. I'm almost in a chrome. And you see my elbow. You push my elbow like so, and then you kill me. You see my hands very high. My face is open behind it. So you push the pommel up there, and you win. These are, well, that was enough. I'm not sure if that's a strategy, but it works. It's still a half-swording technique, and it's better. So, why wouldn't you always then use these over a half-swording technique? Well, half-swording stretch techniques have they have fairly strict requirements, meaning that you can't always use them. For example, in the examples that I just mentioned, you have to see something to be able to act upon it. It's like a quick time event. If you don't see my hilt, you can't grab it. If you don't see my elbow, you can't push it. If you don't see my face under my cross, my sword, you can't go for it. Meaning that they are limited by visibility and distance. The distance for stretto is such that I can hit you with my sword without taking a step, and we are binding at the cross, no closer. For if we are closer, we end up in a situation that's something like this, meaning that you can't see my hands and I can't really see your hands. We're sort of just jumping about here. This is a entangling. It's a crowded, it's a chaotic situation. And another requirement of making those earlier techniques work is that you have to be able to step into them. From this distance, if I want to push the elbow, my arm's strength is not sufficient. I can't step and then here push. Because if I could, then in this situation, I could just grab you and, let's say, lift you off your feet and throw you. My hand isn't that strong. It's pretty weak. So I have to be at a distance where I can see the elbow to react to it, and then step with my entire body's weight and go into it. That allows the technique to work. And that is pretty much the case for all of these stretch techniques, meaning that they do not work if you are too close, if you're too crowded. In these situations, you can, theoretically, if you could use them, you would win much more safely. But you can't, so you have to forego them. Meaning that in this kind of entangling, confusing, chaotic situation, you forego those safer options and you go to a half-sword. Here, because you have a bigger lever now, you have more strength. And not just because of the lever, but because this weak arm can now be supported by this other weak arm. if you try to, for example, push against something with just one hand, like this, with one hand, it's very weak because it's the weakest link is probably the shoulder. The shoulder is just pathetic. But if you bring the other hand to bear, suddenly you can lean with a lot more power. You're activating the latissimus dorsi. You're using your pectorals. You're using all these different muscles. You can bring more muscles to bear. Just as with the step, bringing more muscles and mass into the technique makes it work better. So this is a lot more effective in this chaotic situation. You are bringing order into that chaos, allowing you to push and then stab and then pummel. Okay. So they work better in that chaotic situation, technically. What about the issue of safety? They're not as zero-sum as the center techniques. Well, in historical contexts, Blossfechten would not see it that often because when you are doing this, you can get hit, you can get cut. It's not that safe. You'd rather be at a longer distance and perform some other kind of technique. But if you were in harness, in armor, you might use them because those small scrapes and cuts don't really matter as much. It's not going to hurt you. Similarly, I would argue, today's tournament fencing situation is very similar to that. Because in the tournament, you are laboring under the limitations of the judges. If the judges cannot see a clear, distinct, decisive hit, they're not going to react. So that small, whatever cut that might have cut open your limb and cause you to bleed to death or get infected and die a month later, doesn't really matter. It has to be a clear hit. In that situation, having this less zero-sum option, that weakness disappears because now you're able to enforce your will upon the situation and then perform a clear, distinct technique, which the judges can see, judge, and give you points for. So, to reiterate what I said at the beginning, you do not intentionally go into half-swording, you end up there. And when you do, it's a very good thing to do. It's very effective. It allows you to win, in my experience. That's how I see it. When I think of how I see other people use it, it's not like that. Other people generally, I've seen two types of people use it. One is there's 10 seconds left on the clock, I've lost, even if I have a three-pointer, I'm not going to win. Therefore, I'm just going to fuck around. Oh, half-swording, let's go. That sort of person. Or then a large risk taker. So, half-swording, rush into very close play. It can work. It can work very well. The problem is it's a gamble. It's not a technique, it's a trick. Because this kind of grip is kind of poor against thrusts. So a stop thrust, an unsetzen or an obsetzen, which it's unfall offset. I believe it's an obsetzen, I think. I can't remember. A stop thrust would be very effective against them. Or then just to, let's go this way, sidestep and hit. Those work very well if you keep your distance against a rushing person like that. So, trying to force a half-swording situation probably isn't going to work. Rather, you should aim to use your normal fencing or perhaps a stretto technique. And then when you get into a situation where they just don't work. You are too crowded, you are too closed in, you are too confused. Here, half-swording. Okay, now I can do it. Stings again. Yeah, okay, bye.